Good morning. Good morning. How is everybody today? Lovely Monday morning. I'm still not used to having my working week from Monday to Friday. I quite like my Sundays. So how's everybody today? Start of the week. We're going to talk about payment gateways. Morning, Rachel. That's right, have a great turnout for Monday morning. Yes, we're going to, moving forward, we'll try and schedule these on Tuesdays so we give you a bit of time to get used to the week. Wonderful to see everybody's beautiful smiling faces on Monday. This is one of my favorite topics because it all has to do with making money and how we're going to make more money for our businesses. So that's a good thing, isn't it? Just going to give everybody a few more minutes to join in, and then we're going to kick things off. Just going to get ready. So where's everybody? Actually, no, I'm going to ask you, how was your weekend? Anybody get up to anything really exciting or unique or different? Go anywhere different, explore somewhere in the UAE, really unique? We've got to make the most out of our weekends while we've got this beautiful weather as well.
Hi everyone. We went off to Hatta, and
you went to Hatta.
We did a little hiking with the kids. I can tell you, I realized very quickly how unfit I have become.
Something about COVID that I think has done that to us, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's like they were running up, and I was like, "Please stop! Wait for me." It was lovely.
I want to hear who else did something interesting. I had, my daughter turned 13 this weekend, so we had a 13-year-old's birthday party this weekend. So the last of, I have a house full of teenagers now. All my kids are grown up now. Thank you. Okay, you know what we're going to do? We are going to kick off because it is Monday morning and I want to make sure that we finish at 12. I'm just going to spotlight myself and Ash, just so we have everybody spotlit. There's Ash, and I'm just going to spotlight me as well. There we go. So that will look prettier on the recording. So good morning, everybody. I probably need no introduction now. I think you know who I am. I'm Jen Blandos. I am an entrepreneurship consultant with UN Women. And I am here today with Ayshwarya, who is an expert when it comes to all things payment gateways. And when I'm talking to entrepreneurs, I hear a lot of questions about payment gateways and digital payments, and also a lot of confusion. And so I went to the experts and said, we absolutely need to do a masterclass on how people can make the best use of payment gateways and also choose the right one, which is going to really benefit their business. And so we're going to be diving deep into that today, and hopefully it's going to give you a lot more confidence moving forward with your business. But before we get started, I have a little bit of housekeeping that I wanted to share with you. I don't know, Ash, are we able to share screen and slides and all of that sort of stuff? Well, Ash is pulling that up. I think everybody knows by now, we would be really grateful if everybody could just keep their microphones on silent, and so we don't have any interruptions when the masterclass is happening. And also as well, if you have anything you would like to ask, please go and put it in the chat. I watch the chat box the whole time when we're running through the session. And so I'll interrupt Ash throughout the session, ask for any questions or clarify something if you needed anything to be clarified. One thing I do ask when you use the chat box, it is to ask questions and not to go and promote your business or pitch your services to other people. Whenever we run these masterclasses, they are non-promotional and is purely for us to exchange knowledge and to learn from one another as well. Here are the links. I think you know that. We love it if you share it on social media. if you tag NAMA, if you tag UN Women, if you also tag our presenters, and you can also tag me and I'll go and reshare that as well. So we love the social media love. So if you could do that throughout the session, that would be perfect as well. So a couple of things that are coming up. One, if we could just go to the next slide. Our friends over at Chari have a little competition going on at the moment. So they're looking for 4 F&B concepts and 4 retail homegrown brands to set up their new business in Al Mamsha, which is Sharjah's latest destination. So there is an application process, and they have a 25,000 dirham cash prize, so you can fit out the space and you get 1 year of free rent. So go have a look at shara.ae if you think this might benefit your business, and reach out to them and apply for this session. So there's an F&B track and a retail track. So if you win the F&B track, that's 100K as well to fit out your space. So sounds like a good deal if you were thinking or looking at where you could set up. Have a look over in Al Mamsha in Sharjah. And if we could look at the next slide, just a little quick reminder, Maya is going to pop into the chat box. If there are any of you who have new businesses, and by new businesses we mean less than about 6 months old, so maybe you are struggling with ideas on how to kind of really build and get your business set up, we have a 16-week accelerator which is launching at the end of February, and the deadline is tomorrow. So if you were thinking about applying and haven't done so, here's the information, and Maya is also going to pop that in the chat box for you. And the next thing I wanted to remind everybody about as well is the Women-Owned Business Directory. And this is actually really making an impact. We had our first event connecting women-owned businesses with potential buyers at the end of January at Expo at the UN Hub. And we brought together buyers, and we brought together some women who had listed on the Women-Owned Business Directory to meet those buyers. And they connected, and a number of those women have been invited to go and register their details on the procurement list for some of these companies. So again, if you were thinking about registering for the Women-Owned Business Directory, now is definitely the time that you should do so, because we are starting to take action to be able to support women-owned businesses to have connections with companies who would like to buy from women-owned businesses. And if you have any questions about that, feel free. I think you have the UN Women email. You can reach out on that and somebody on the team will get in touch with you. So I think you all know, if we just move forward here, Ash, just start to kick off the presentation. There we go. We love to do polls before we start our sessions, and I would be really grateful if you would be able to help us with our benchmarking poll. We want to know how much you know about payment gateways right now. It's going to help Ash a little bit understand how she's going to be able to pitch the presentation today and understand your knowledge, but also as well that within the UN Women NAMA program, we really like to be able to see that we're making a difference. And so this helps us if we can see that you didn't really have much knowledge in the beginning, but then after the end of the masterclass you do, it gives us a box that we can tick and see that we're able to go and support you. So thank you very much for that. And I believe there's one other poll. Is that the only poll for that? Oh, I think that's it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take myself off spotlight and I'm going to hand it over to Ash. And Ash, I'm going to be your little voice in the background, interrupting you with questions and providing you with support when you need me.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jen. At this point, I would like to, if I could, introduce Shraddha, who is my partner and who handles all things introduction and talking about us and all of that. So if Shraddha could just take over that little bit for me, and then I would move on to the actual meat in terms of payment gateways.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. This is Shraddha from 11:15. I can't see myself, so I hope you can see me. So Ash and I together, we started 11:15 over a year ago. However, both of us are serial entrepreneurs. We've been in the region for around 16 years. Ash started her first e-commerce venture. I think you were one of the first people in the e-commerce space a couple of years ago, back when souq.com, etc. launched. And I also, yes, 2010. And then I started my first business in 2006 when I was 21. I got the bug earlier on. And since then, 7 businesses down the line with Ayshwarya as well, a couple of e-commerce businesses down the line. We met together on an e-commerce project itself, wherein I was looking to venture out into the digital space with my current agency, quite set up. And I was like, you know what, I need to hire a professional because e-commerce can be quite daunting when you're entering. There's so many different platforms. And like today, we're going to talk about the payment gateways as well. And I was like, I much rather go to a professional who can also talk me through in layman terms, because I do not have much of a technical background, but at the same time, really guide me through the whole process. And that's what Ash and I bring to the table. Ayshwarya has been consulting over 10 years with different e-commerce businesses, from fashion to furniture to jewelry, FMCG. And I have marketing, events, and branding experience in 16 years in the region, again, across different industries. And we're combining both marketing and e-commerce expertise over 25 years and bringing that to our clients under 11:15.
Perfect. Thank you, Shraddha. I will move on then. It's to just ask for me to understand, how many of us already here have payment gateways? Are we thinking about getting one? Where do we stand? Again, this would really help me tailor this information. All right. So 52% have some knowledge. That's great. Thank you for that, Jen. That helps me. This is the first poll. Yes, the knowledgeable about payment gateways one. Right. Sorry to push you guys right back into another poll, but it would really understand if we're talking today about setting up something from scratch, or are most of you interested in understanding what are the options out there? Well, I don't have a payment gateway for my business. That's a little hypocritical, because I'm going to be telling you in a little bit about how it could benefit B2B. But no, we don't have one. As consultants, we are not allowed to get one. While we have that, I think I've just given that a few minutes. Jen, is it okay if I move forward to the next slide?
Absolutely, you can. We'll let everybody fill that in. And just as everybody goes and does that, it's interesting. So we've got most people, roughly about 77% of people don't have or are thinking of getting one as well. So that's really useful as well to see that there is definitely a need that we have for people to go and have a payment gateway or want to know. So this workshop is going to be great for everyone.
Amazing. All right, great. So it also helps me tailor in terms of, how deep and where I can start. So let's start, as they say in Sound of Music, at the very beginning. So who needs a payment gateway? Let's start right there. And often we get this question more often than you might think. And it is a confusion in terms of, do I really need a payment gateway? Does the region work really well with cash and delivery? Are there other ways I can do it without going through all of this hassle and jumping through all of these hoops? I'm here to give you the short answer on this and say, if you accept payments online, you need a payment gateway. It's literally as simple as that. You need a method to accept digital payments. What that might look like, we can talk about a little bit down the line. It could look like payment links. It could look like a payment gateway, but you should be accepting payments online. Who accepts payment gateways? EdTech, MedTech, e-commerce merchants, pretty much everybody. Sorry, I'm still very old school with these headphones. I haven't quite managed to move to the AirPods era. So pretty much anyone who sells something online needs a payment gateway, in my opinion. B2B is slowly picking up as well as with payment gateways. And B2B, basically, very often the big struggle was there was no standardization of payments, right? B2B is very much finger in air, right? This is the size of your contract, this is how much you're paying me, and therefore this is what I'm going to pay you, or this is what I'm going to charge you, etc., etc. And then send me an invoice, send me a PO, 55 months later, you can pay me, but the 45-day payment term is how it used to work before. More and more, it's becoming standardized. And I want to give you guys an example, and this is, it really blew my mind. One of the most successful implementations of B2B we've done or we've advised on is an oil and gas company. An oil and gas company who sells spare parts. Don't ask me to explain how it works. Apparently, it's like they have these 3 different types of screws that they have to sell to their B2B suppliers. And it's pretty standard. It's like if you buy X, it's this much. If you buy Y, it's this much. If you buy Z, it's this much. And the business struggled so much with just having the same conversation over and over and over again. And that was the best they could do. It was very standardized. And they were it's an industry that's not really been digitized or disrupted much. So they thought a lot and long and hard about doing it. But when they did it, they were amazed at the results, because their purchasers on the other end as well were tired of having the same conversation, of raising the same POs, of having the same stuff. So it solved the problem for both of them. But those guys would just come, they would place their order, and they would move on. And it was really successful. And I thought one of the most interesting, because you think of digital payments across everywhere, but with oil and gas, when I had this advisory happen, I was like, that is now truly disruptive. That's something very different. So if they can do it, pretty much anyone can do it. If you've standardized your payments, and if you haven't as well, there is a solution in place there. All right. How does it work, right? It's very simple. At its simplest form is you have a credit card and you want to pay a merchant, but there's a trust issue on both sides. Your credit card company goes, who's that guy? Who's that merchant? I've never heard about them before. How am I sure they're not just some fraudulent guy? You as a user, you're like, I don't get these guys. I don't know them. They might just take my credit card details and run. And similarly, on the merchant side, he's like, yeah, these guys might not have enough credit, or they might not have enough stuff. It might be bad debt. There might be a lot of it. So that's where the payment gateway steps in and says, I got you guys. So the payment gateway is basically the middleman. It has agreements in place where it acquires the information in terms of the payment. It sends the information. So the merchant shop sends the information to the payment gateway, which then confirms it, saying, is it all good? The checks with the card association, is it all good? Does this person have enough money? Is this merchant good? Fantastic. And then there is a person involved, and the money gets taken away from the patients. Sorry, we do a lot of med tech. So if you hear me say patient, I'm very sorry, from the user's account. And then, of course, it's held by the payment gateway and paid to the merchant. So there is somebody who's actually demystifying and who's sitting in the middle of all of this, making sure everything is working fine. And that's really your payment gateway. Also solves a problem for a merchant, because you have to be. I'm sorry? All right. It solves a problem where you have to be something called PSI compliant, the payment standards industry, data security, something else for S. I will tell you guys, I have it in my notes. I can never remember it. To be able to accept these details on your website yourself, right? Because it's obviously very, very sensitive information. And for a merchant to get PSI certified, it's not very easy. And that's why you have your payment gateway who come in the middle, and they have this certification. Right. Before we move on to payment gateways, I think there's a very important conversation that needs to be had regionally about cash on delivery, because this is something that we see all the time. This is something that comes about all the time, saying, do we really need cash on delivery? Cash on delivery, as we all know, if you're a merchant who's working on cash on delivery, you know that this is the bane of your existence, right? I mean, It is a nightmare having to coordinate with your customer, tell them to make sure they have change, and talk to your courier company saying, oh, my customer doesn't have change. Then the guy will show up and he'll say, oh, by the way, I don't want to pay by card now. I want to pay by card on delivery. Then your courier will call you and say, well, they don't want to pay. It is, I hear you guys. And this is not a new problem. I know that doesn't make you feel better, but it is not a new problem. Over the years, all of us e-commerce merchants have had many conversations about how can we reduce the dependence on cash on delivery. In fact, when I was running my store, and I think this was 2014, we had a meeting with some of the top e-commerce merchants in the region to talk about how can we move away from this. And at that time, we all actually came to the conclusion saying we just can't unless all of us do it. We just can't. And those of us who were in the smaller space at that time we were not in a position to call the shots, right? We were not in a position to say we're not going to offer COD anymore, because it would literally mean we did not have a business. So we told the big guys, hey, you guys should lead the way. The big guys were like, we still have a significant portion of our income coming from COD. And it was just this vicious circle. Even as late as 2019, a business that we launched in 2019, which was a fashion brand, we had this conversation and we said, you know what, first orders will still be COD. We cannot do it without COD. And then 2020 came in. 2020 hit us with the pandemic, and everybody had to get comfortable with digitization. There was absolutely no choice. You did not have an option to pay by cash. Cash is one of the filthiest things out there anyway, in terms of the microbiological load and all of that anyway. So I think it was one of those things where people didn't want to touch the cash during the pandemic. So the National did this report, which said regionally, or especially UAE focused, COD payments are now 75% lower since the onset of the pandemic, 75%. And digital payments have doubled right up to 98%. 40% of the consumers are less likely to use COD in the future. So it's fantastic news for merchants who have been thinking, how can I move away from this? So, but does that mean if you're a new merchant and you have just launched and you've probably not built your base yet, you could launch a store without COD? As consultants, we would still say you need to offer COD, at least for a certain span of time, and whatever that looks like for your business, till you're able to see the acceleration in terms of your sales. Simply because the mindset is still very much my first order, let me just check. If the order comes, I'll pay. That's still very much the mindset. From your second and third order onwards, once they trust you, once they've received your goods and they're seeing that the quality of goods is great, they are happy to use, to pull out their credit cards or use Apple Pay or whatever it is. But the first transaction still tends, if they've not heard of you or they're buying from a Facebook ad and you're still in to make your brand, the brand awareness is still being built, as many small and medium businesses we have that, I would still offer it. But it's fantastic the direction it's going in now. You know, some of the big players are doing what we talked about all of those years ago. They're penalizing COD. More and more people are getting there. So we're getting there. You could probably phase it out, but probably for a few months to launch, I would say at least about 6 to 8 months, you should have it available for your customers. Before I move on to a lot more in terms of payment gateways, I'd like to understand, when you go and you've approached a payment gateway, a lot of you have said you haven't, or when you're thinking of approaching a payment gateway, there is a whole fintech mindset. So when you go and you say, these guys are a bank, they are fintech, or they're like in the banking space, do you think their terms and conditions are set in stone because it's banking and it's fintech, it's negotiable? Or do you think it's negotiable, but I can't be bothered? Or how do I even go about it? It's super intimidating. I'll give you guys a minute.
We get a few more people to fill it in. We're at about 60%. So it's really interesting to know this, because I think I hear a lot of debates from people about the rates, and how, you know, you have people compare their rates as well. Well, I get this rate, you get that rate, and trying to understand where the differences are as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, isn't it, Jen? Because you want to be able to go and say, this is what it is, you know, everybody gets this rate and it shouldn't matter. But and that's why we have the session where we have to navigate, I guess, if life was just only that easy.
Yes.
Do you have any?
You know, we're close. We're close. Well, we're looking about 50% of people think that it's set in stone, while, you know, the other half are thinking that it can be negotiable, but quite a few people feel that it can be intimidating as well.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I agree with everybody here, because that was me, right? When I set up my first e-commerce platform, I was like, no way. And you know how it's a bank. You're not used to negotiating with banks, right? Where we come from, it's, I mean, now things have changed, but our mindset is very much, it's a financial institution and what they say is how it goes. But fintech is a business at the end of the day. And we all need to understand and approach it just like we would approach any other business in the region. You would not go to your supplier or your vendor or anybody who's supplying to you and take the first thing they offer you. You would have a conversation. And that's exactly how you approach your payment gateway. You have to have a conversation. You have to be able to ask them. And that's why a lot of people get different rates, because of the fact that it is really how you approach the conversation. What are the magic words? What are you saying? And we'll talk about that a little bit more. But absolutely, it is a negotiation. Does it always mean that you'll win? No. Does it mean that they'll always come back and give you the best rate possible? No. More and more, they have become, payment gateways are sticking to what they've put on their website. More and more, it's become less negotiable and more standardized, which in some ways is good. But there's absolutely room to have that conversation and put that caveat in place for yourself, because they'll go, oh, you don't have this, so you don't have that, and you go, fine. But when I do, and I would put that in writing and say, when I do, I'm going to come back to you and we're going to revisit this. And you have to put that caveat or something in place, because they need to know that when you get to a certain threshold, you get to a certain volume, that you are going to be wanting to have a conversation, because it is no longer a monopoly. It is no longer one person or two or three guys who are managing this entire situation. You know, I'm going to talk later in the presentation about 5 payment gateways, but I will caveat that by saying that there are seemingly thousands of providers in the market that I don't even know half of them. There is so much competition in the market now. There is always a better deal to be had. So absolutely, it is something that we have to have a conversation. It is something that we have to negotiate. It is something that we have to find that person, get in touch, call the sales guy, have him call you and say, what can you do for me? And then we'll talk a little bit on the next slide in terms of what are we negotiating. Not the next slide, the slide after that. Before we move on to what are we negotiating and how are we negotiating, let me talk to you guys about payment links versus payment gateways. There's two products, right, that the payment industry provides. One is the payment gateway, which is pretty much what you would see when you go to any sort of e-commerce platform, where you add a product, it adds to cart, you check out, you put in your details, you had checkout, you hit checkout, you add your credit card details, and you're out of there. You're pretty much on your own, right? There's no one saying, hey, do this, do that. The website's giving you a few calls to action, but pretty much that's you, and you figured it out, and now you're a pro at it, because online shopping is the new national sport. So everybody knows this. But more and more, there's another option that's coming into place. We started off with social commerce. Social commerce, I mean, I'm sure most of you know this, but social commerce is the kind of commerce that works across through social media platforms. Think WhatsApp, think Instagram shops, right? How would these people who are selling, or these merchants who are selling across these platforms, accept payments? There was a real problem there. Or if you're at a market, I remember years and years ago, I would do markets, and people would keep coming up to me and saying, do you accept credit card? Because I don't have cash. And we'd be like, no, or you'll have to go onto my website and you place the order on the website, and then here's my bag, you can have it. I didn't have an instant solution, and they would be standing there trying to add that to cart, and it was just not ideal. These guys have come into this market and saying, let's disrupt that. Let's offer a solution, a virtual solution for those who offer social commerce. And that's how this started. So what social commerce is basically somebody WhatsApps you, somebody contacts you on Instagram saying, how can I order your product? You go to a provider. They're absolutely fantastic leaders in the market, where Zibuni will allow you to create a sort of a product catalog, and you're able to just add. So you, instead of the user adding stuff to cart, you add that cart, you create that payment link, and you send it to them. They simply hit that payment link, they go, oh, 300 dirhams. You hit the 300 dirhams, they check out, it's over. It's a matter of minutes. The setup is a little bit, in terms of the merchant, you just have to make sure you've set up the catalog and you put the prices in, but in a matter of minutes. Now, what happens is, when that is the model, your conversion rates are through the roof, right? A traditional e-commerce platform converts at 1 to 2%. However, social commerce, assisted commerce, I won't talk about social commerce. Social commerce still could have lower conversion rates, but assisted commerce, we have a merchant who's on assisted commerce who's seeing 87% conversion rates. So 80 of the leads that come in hot, because these are all hot leads, we are seeing an 87% conversion rate, which is just mind-blowing. So whatever the hot leads are coming in, and why is that? Because someone is hand-holding you through the process. Someone is there going, hey, can I answer your question? Would you like this in red, black, or green? You'd like it in green, no problem. That's 10 dirhams more. Okay, that's fantastic. You don't want it. Do you want a discount? Fine, I can add that discount for you. It's like having that conversation continuously. So imagine that's shop assistant, but less annoying, helping you along the way at a time that's convenient for you, right? That's what's happening. So bigger businesses realize this and they go, wait a second, these guys, the social commerce guys, are having a fantastic conversion rate. So let's move on. Let's also try and do this. And they move more and more. There's a movement happening towards assisted commerce, where there is a team of customer service executives who are sitting, the order comes in, or the order is sent in, they're having a conversation, they're supporting, they're helping, they're moving them, and they're creating these payment links and they're sending them through. In a situation like this, the payment link that they are creating is probably not a Zibuni type. It's just literally, others offer it, Fulusi, Mcnatty, checkout, where you can just put the total amount, you can send that link in, and the person pays and they're out of there. And if they don't pay, you know where they live. You have their WhatsApp details. You're like, knock, knock, excuse me, hello, you need to pay me. There's the abandoned cart, and the attrition is a lot lower at that point in time. Now, the advantages of this is that obviously the higher conversion rate, but the disadvantage of it is it's not a very scalable model, unless you want to go back to the 1980s where you had a call center full of people managing phone calls, instead now they're all sitting on WhatsApp. It's not a scalable model, but there will be a hybrid that comes into place more and more, where you will see a lot of automated commerce, and you'll see a lot of as well as payment links happening. So like I said, Zibuni is, you create the catalog and you create that cart and you send it through. Mcnatty, I will talk. I'm sure most people would have not heard about Mcnatty, and I'll talk about them a little bit later in terms of their strengths. Checkout. So depending on who you want, depending on what you want, each of these providers offers different things, right? Paylink, which is Point Checkout, who's another provider, offers an integration with your invoicing system. So if you don't want to go ahead and then create another invoice on Zoho or Xero or whatever, they offer that integration. Checkout offers an integration with QuickBooks. So pretty much whenever you create this payment links, it's integrated to your invoicing system. So you're not, if you are creating invoices, you're not doing twice the work. Right? Zibuni is, like I said, it's a marketplace. It's fast, it's quick. You can see the product, you can buy it. That's a whole different model. So depending on the business and how you are operating, any of these solutions might be good for you on a smaller scale, if this is the path towards social commerce or assisted commerce that you are taking. As a small business owner, we have many hats already that we are wearing, right? We are wearing 50,000 hats, and adding the hat of a CSE or someone who can support people on WhatsApp to take payments might be a bit much, because I have seen firsthand how that can take over your life with one of our clients. However, if you have the bandwidth to manage that, I would highly recommend it, because what it does towards building your base is unparalleled in terms of what it can do towards creating your conversions and building your base. And then you make sure that you're funneling them back to your website or your more automations the next time. But in the beginning, to actually bring them in this or convert them, this is an absolute game changer.
Ash, I'm jumping in just before we change to the next slide, because there's a lot of questions about that. So first of all, I think there's a few people who are confused just about the definition of social commerce and what exactly social commerce means. So do you want to just back that up and explain again one more time exactly what social commerce is?
Yep, absolutely. Social commerce is, at its simplest form, selling via social media. Whatever your social media poison of choice might be, whether it's Instagram, whether it's Facebook, whether it's WhatsApp, when you're selling through any of these social media platforms, it's social commerce. It's very simple. Sorry if I made that sound way more complicated than it is.
And when we're talking about assisted commerce, that is basically when you are going to have somebody on your team who will be there on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, basically supporting the person through the process, and then in the end, sending them a link to make a payment.
That is correct. Absolutely. So not throwing them into the wild west of here's my site, go find what you want, but really supporting them through the process in terms of what would you like to buy today? It's more like a personal shopping experience. It's more like, what would you like to buy today? Or do you have any questions? Many times assisted commerce is picked up even when the chat box is used. So when somebody has a problem, at that point in time, you have two flows set up. One flow could be your automated payments. I might just be a person that I don't want to talk to someone, right? I figured I know how e-commerce works. I want to come in, I want to add to cart, I want to put my card details, and I want to check out. That might be me. But if I have a problem, very often you have another flow set in place where somebody contacts you on chat, or somebody said, I need help. When that person has come into that ecosystem of chat or help to a CSE, then you move them into an assisted commerce flow where you
okay,
get this
Ash,
person. Yeah.
I'm interrupting you for a second because I always like to bust jargon. CSE, tell everybody what CSE is.
Customer Service Executive, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. Me too. I actually have a medical condition where I can't read acronyms. I can't believe I did that.
That's okay. I'm here to interrupt you and pull up the jargon. So customer service executive. So basically, what you're saying is that it's a great option if you have the bandwidth to add that resource onto your platform. And you see this on a lot of sites where they even have like the little chat function where you can have a live chat or you can have a WhatsApp chat. And so that gives them the ability to speak with the customer and then to send the link for the payment.
Absolutely.
Okay. Now,
so just move them in. Sorry. I would say
that's okay.
Go for it, Jen.
That's fine. I just want to clarify a few other questions that participants have. So one has asked, does it mean that payment gateways are always through your website?
Yes. That's a payment gateway. It's taking payments through your website. I mean, and there are different ways. I will talk about it a little bit more in detail in terms of how it works, but that is an integration.
Okay, and I think we'll get into this in a bit more detail when we speak about specific options. But one person has asked if we can accept payments from outside the UAE with payment link providers.
Yeah. Certain providers will allow it and certain providers will not. So you'll have to check with the provider. I know the checkout will allow you to take international payments. So absolutely, it's possible, but it's very much provider driven and your contract with them.
Yeah, and this is something as well. For example, I know that some card providers struggle with some cards from America because they don't have the specific security which is required. And so that if, for example, if you do have a lot of customers from a specific country, it's always useful to have that conversation before you sign the contract with the payment gateway provider.
100%, 100%. And they're very good with, at the end of the day, they make money if you make money, right?
Absolutely.
So the goals are aligned here. They want you to be bringing in transactions because that's the only way they're profitable. So they're very good with actually helping you find the right solution for your business. And honestly, this is where us, and even I did as an SME, the intimidation that we talk about, we're not able to go and have these very open conversations, or we feel like we can't have these open conversations with the payment gateways because we feel like maybe we're too small, maybe that's something that they're not going to help us or something like that. But honestly, everybody's goals here are aligned, and you go and say, this is a product I need, I don't have, this is a budget, I don't have so much, I can't spend, find me a solution, and they will find you a solution. For the most part, most of the guys will find you a solution, or they'll say, listen, we're not the right guys for you. And a lot of the undoing that we see could have been stopped, or a lot of the struggles or misalignment in terms of the payment gateway, the payment provider, I will say right here, the payment provider and the merchant could have actually been really solved or preempted by having this conversation. I will talk a little bit later in terms of what are certain things to talk about, and I'll give you some tips about how to go about that as well.
Absolutely. And I think let's move on. There's lots more questions, but I think it will fit in as we go further on in the presentation, including costs and charges and working across multi-currencies. So we can look at that after. Thanks, Ash.
Absolutely. Sure. Right. Let's come in here to the next one. Right. What are the factors that we need to consider before we choose our payment gateways? Now, here we're talking about payment gateways, right? What are the factors that we need to consider? And how do we choose these factors? And how can we actually communicate this effectively? I'm a big believer in building my list of requirements. I like to have a document that I create, and I say, this is going to be my business, right? This is my target market. These are my target currencies that I would like to accept payments in. This is where I foresee a lot of gifting happening, or I don't. For example, when I say gifting, what happens is, like Jen rightly said, when you're in baby and child, which I did for a lot of my time in the region, grandparents live all over the world, and they want to buy something on your platform and have it sent to the child. And very often their credit card payments would not go through because the providers are not able to accept those cards. There are certain, so think about, it all starts with having clarity in terms of your own business. In terms of my own business, what do I expect? How do I expect payments to go? If I'm looking at expanding into the GCC in 5 years, mention that. But right now, the solution that you need does not need to encompass GCC. The solution, all of this is, it's something that your business evolves, and these gateways will evolve with you. So what are some of the things that you will put in and that you will think about in terms of when you are building this sheet or building this requirements list for your payment gateway, or when are you sitting down with him or having this meeting? So number one, let's talk about your platform. Where are you building your e-commerce store or any sort of store? A lot of times, if you're going with some of the major CMS options out there, content management systems out there, like Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, CS Cart or OpenCart or any of these guys have already put in the work for you. Most major payments will be integrated in terms of plugins, but it is a conversation to have. Let's not assume anything. So let's say I'm planning to build my e-commerce platform on Shopify, for example. That's something that you would have to add. Then add where do you expect payments coming from? Who's your target market? And which is your area of operations? So these are the few things you would start off with. Then let's look at their offering when you're making the comparison. Some of them have setup fees. right? So some payment gateways will say, like Teller has 3 tiers. And you will see through my presentation here, what I've not done is I've not told you this is how much Teller is charging, or this is how much Checkout is charging, or this is how much so-and-so is charging. I've not put pricing in here because pricing is literally in 10 minutes, it will change, number one. Number two, we just talked about negotiation early on. It doesn't matter what they've put on their website. It's about you having that conversation. But today's session is more about empowering you about the type of conversations to have to find the right provider for you, right? So there are two, typically payments happen in a few ways. One is some of them will have one-time setup fee. PayTabs, for example, has a one-time setup fee, $300 to $400. At its most basic tier, Teller will charge you 340 something dirhams, but do not take a transaction percentage. And as your volumes increase, the transaction percentage will start and the fixed fee will come down. Others like Checkout do not have a setup fee, they have a transaction fee only. Now, our first instinct is to go ahead and negotiate on what? Would it be percentage or would it be, this would have been a great poll to have, Jen, I wish I thought about it. But anyway,
Next time.
Next time, I know.
So I want people, we'll go and write in the chat box. I think that's good. Let's have some conversations in the chat box and then I'll shout them out to you.
Okay, amazing. Our first instinct, I'm really curious because maybe my first instinct is a little bit different than everybody else's. So I'll wait for your response on that and we'll come back to this. Acceptance. So acceptance is in terms of what we talked about earlier, where credit cards from which regions are you able to accept? You know, or am I able to accept payments in US dollars? Do I want a US dollar? So usually they have two products. They have an AE product and a dollar product, and the rates on each of these are different. So write down, I want to take payments in dollars. I want to take payments in dirhams. Where do you want to accept payments from regionally? I want to accept it globally. I want payments from Senegal, whatever it might be. Think about it and put it down. Only you know this. Your payment gateway will not know this. This is information as merchants we have a responsibility to provide to them so that they're able to come back to us.
So we've got a big variation. We've got setup fees, percentages, long-term benefits. So a real range as well, Ash.
Okay, amazing, amazing. So here's where you go in and you think about your projections and your numbers. And I can't do a presentation without talking to e-commerce entrepreneurs about doing their numbers. I find some way or the other to sneak that in there somehow, because it's so important and so key to have your forecasting and your numbers done. It's a very simple process. You'll sit down, you'll check what your acquisition rates look like, and you'll see, what do I expect to be making, right? And while sometimes the instinct is to go in and say, I want to go in hard on the percentage, think about what that means for you in terms of a number towards your monthly transaction value, correct? Now, I remember I did this one panel with another at one time, and there were 3 of us sitting, and I was representing the small business. There was a medium business in place, and then there was a large business in place. So the moderator asked me, and they said, Ash, you know, he asked the medium business owner, he said, you guys, I've not heard you talk about percentages much. And they went, it doesn't really matter. We have margins that cover it. We're fine. But it was the small business owner and the large business owner who actually jumped in and go, no, every business matters. For every bit matters. Now, for me, it matters because I'm a small business owner and every dirham counts. But for the higher volume transaction counts because it could go into millions, right? So it's about then sitting down and actually figuring out, where on the scale do I fall? Do I really, I mean, what is that number that's non-negotiable to me? If I'm transacting of 50,000 dirhams per month, for example, and my payment gateway comes in at a 2.9%, right? And I manage to bring that down to 2.5%, I'm saving 200 dirhams, right? Now, that's a great saving, and that's saving that you need to have. But where else, what else could I actually be negotiating with this payment gateway, which might actually increase my savings further? Sometimes it's setup fees. I'll be honest with you guys, I have not paid setup fees on behalf of any of my clients till today. I refuse to do it. I have not done it. The only time I've ever paid a setup fee was for one of my own businesses. And I regretted that very quickly. And that was because I was in a hurry. I was dumped by a big payment gateway overnight. And I had just signed a big contract with a bank and I needed someone to start taking my payments immediately. And at that point in time, I was just like, take my money. Whoever will get me onboarded tomorrow, take my money, I'll pay for it. And that was the only time. Until now, I have not paid a setup fee. So that gives you an indication that this is something that's absolutely negotiable. Keep in mind, though, that I am also a consultant, and therefore my bargaining position is slightly higher. But what I mean to say is that it's something that can absolutely be negotiated. And especially if it's something like $300, $400, and you're looking at your transaction volume where you're saving 20, 30 dirhams per month, in the long run, you're better off just like focusing on the setup fee. Is this clear in terms of that whole negotiation point? I think it's something I feel quite passionately about, even though it's a quite small thing, because very often I have merchants who come to me and they say, yeah, well, we've brought it down to 2.3%, but we're paying this bank transfer rate, and it breaks my heart. Like, no, what's the point? Don't do it.
Yeah, and that's why, as you say, it's important to look at the full picture, and every business has slightly different needs, right? So what one business negotiates might not be as good for another, depending upon what your transactions are like and how your business is operating. And it's the same thing with bank accounts as well, that I say to people that, I hear, oh, well, this bank is really expensive, or this bank is really cheap. But then, they make up those fees and other things as well with different transactions. So that's where you need to look at how you as a business run and what potential costs you might have, or what that looks like. We have a question where someone says, how can I project my sales? That's a bigger that's a bigger piece, and I think we're going to put a pin in that and come back to that, because there are other workshops that we're going to be running through UN Women and NAMA, where we'll be looking at things like that as well.
It's do you have 24 hours kind of a question?
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So we'll put a pin in that for now, and
Yeah.
I'll move on to the next one, which is the bank transfer, right? One of the providers, and I'm not going to say who, but one of the providers I'm talking about today have a 90 dirham bank transfer fee. That means when they transfer money from their dashboard to your bank account, local bank to bank transfer, they charge you 90 dirhams. Right. It doesn't matter, no matter how much you brought the percentage down, and then they have a 2-week payment cycle. So every 2 weeks, they're charging you 90 dirhams to do a bank to bank transfer locally, which is just completely unacceptable. It still makes me just like, what? And secondly, imagine that adding up as against your percentage, depending on your volumes, right? Of course, if you have a very high volume transactions, then this might be cheaper. But this is something to absolutely consider. It's a question that a lot of merchants don't even ask. What does the bank transfer fee look like? And I've put that in there because that's one of the first questions I ask a few merchants, and they're like, oh, I'm not too sure. So,
and if I can add to that as well, Ash, I think it's also the frequency of the bank transfer, because that's another thing as well, is that some payment gateways will allow you to request and release your funds, where others send it to you automatically. Some send it daily, some send it weekly, some send it every 2 weeks, every month. And if cash flow is important for you, you need to ask that question as well.
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. Again, you decide the frequency. They don't decide the frequency. So very often, we've had, it's a 50-50 success that they will change the cycle. If you're a very small merchant, they might not, but you have the absolute right to go with somebody who would respect that, or whose cycles look better for you and for your business. You might be totally fine with having the money sitting there for a month, or you might not. And it really is, it's a conversation to be had, and it's a point to be negotiated together with reserves. So I'll come to that in a bit. The fifth is the checkout user experience. And my next slide talks all about that. So, I'm very conscious of time, so I'll just push that over there. And the final one I'm going to is reserves. So some payment gateways will hold some of your money as a rolling reserve. It could be anywhere between 5 to 15%. Some of them go as high as 20%. What they do is they will release everything but this amount of money, because they want to be covered in case you have something like a chargeback, or you have some refunds that you need to offer, or some charges for them. This could be, when you're a smaller merchant, this could be something that you could have appetite for. Typically with my medium merchants, this is something that we negotiate down as far as a percentage is concerned, but we don't really negotiate it like we're not going to do it. But when it comes to the larger merchants, for sure, you would negotiate this and say, I can't afford to have this reserve. And then the payment gateway will come back to you and say, when you're the larger merchant is when I do want to have a reserve, because they want to make sure that they are protected and their exposure to you is protected. So depending on your cash flow, as Jen said, this is again a conversation. Does your business have the appetite to have 5 to 10% of the funds that you're receiving tied up at all times, or do you not? Because there are payment gateways out there who offer zero reserve as well. So you don't have to go with somebody who's taking this rolling reserve if you don't have the appetite. But it's again that bigger picture. What are they offering me, and is everything that they're offering me worth me holding up or blocking my cash flow? And that's that little bit of a balancing act that every business has to take a decision and make for themselves.
Just as you're about to move on, a couple of questions that link to banks and fees. People are asking about who pays the transfer fee, the business owner or the consumer. And that it's going to be you. It's not going to be your consumer. And actually, there's another point as well, because some businesses do it, that they add a percentage on to cover the cost that they pay to the credit card company. What's your perspective on that?
But from a legal perspective, legally, a merchant is not allowed to pass on the credit card cost to the user. It's legally not allowed. From a regulatory perspective, it's not allowed. Is anyone stopping you from adding 2% to your pricing to help you cover that cost? Not really. That said, it's
the
really,
cost
again,
of doing business.
It's the cost of doing business. I think that 2% that you're paying, or the 3% that you're paying your payment gateway, should not make or break your business. And the only time it's going to have that much impact on your bottom line is if you're doing very high volumes, in which case they will all gladly sit at the table to reduce the percentage for you anyway.
Yeah.
So I personally don't think that it's something that you should pass on to the consumer. It is one of those, when I do a CAPEX OPEX flow, I always add the payment gateway numbers on my OPEX, but it is something that you add, just like you would pay for Etisalat or you pay for Do, and you know that this is what you need to pay them, you pay for your payment gateway. It's just one of those things that you have in your OPEX.
Okay, let's move on. Okay. I think there's more that I'll choose at the end, but I think that's good.
Okay. Now, remember this slide, the number 5, where I said it depends on your checkout experience and the UX that you want, and that's very important. Different industries, right, have different standards in terms of how this checkout UX should be for maximum conversions. So you have the self-hosted, PayPal is self-hosted, and Stripe is another self-hosted. Basically, the checkout experience moves to their site, right? So everything else happens on your site, but the absolute checking out is happening on their site. So they're adding the details, et cetera, on that platform. Now, Stripe does it. Now, I'm not going to say a lot about PayPal's experience. Jen knows how I feel. I'm going to be quiet about that. But Stripe is a great example for a self-hosted platform. Because why Stripe does that is because, again, remember that Stripe's needs and your needs are aligned. They want you to make money so that they can make money. And certain providers like Shopify and Stripe Go, we have worked with millions of merchants. We know what that experience needs to look like to convert. We don't want you guys messing with that experience. And therefore, we will tell you how it should be done. That's one of these. The second is checkout on site, payment off site. So basically, we are all used to this. This is regionally the most common one, where you're adding all of the details on the site, and then you hit pay, and then that little pop-up or payment page opens up where you add your credit card details and you check out. That's via something called an iframe. The iframe is it's just like a frame. You can customize that and how it looks. It looks pretty much like your site, but it's actually a gateway into another site. And on-site payments, right? Certain payment gateways will let you take the payments. Mostly fashion sites have it. If you go to Namshi, or if you shopped on any sort of a fashion site, you have those blocks to add your credit card details right there where you're checking out as a part of your checkout process. And when we were building a fashion site, our UX designer told us very, very clearly, he said, fashion needs to have an on-site checkout. It's one of those things. It builds trust. It goes to show that you're one of those sites, that merchants that are actually trusted by the payment gateways, and that is the experience for fashion. And so you had to find the payment gateway who would allow that. At the time, it was Payfort, or what is now called Amazon Payments. So working or choosing your payment gateway is a backwards process, right? First, choose your platform. It's very important, and there's a whole session to be had on how you choose your platform, because literally that decision could make or break your business. Then you choose your checkout flow. You decide on what is the industry standard, or what are the best practices for my checkouts flow. Don't let whatever I'm saying today overwhelm you, or say, how am I ever going to find out? And if you can't, and your developer says on checkout on WooCommerce, this is how it looks. Shopify has its own checkout, or on Magento, this is what it needs to look like. It's fine. As long as you don't, it's totally fine. It can be changed later on. It's not a huge deal, but it's definitely, if you have certain specifics in mind, like we had our client who said we have to have an on-page checkout, then that's something you put in that list I was talking about, to be able to see, are you able to offer this kind of an experience? On my next slides, I will also talk about some of the payment gateways and what are the experiences that they offer. And we'll take it from there. Any questions on this?
Hey, everybody wants to know about PayPal, so we're going to wait until we get to the PayPal. And we're getting lots of questions about individual providers. And again, remember, we're not here to push any specific provider, and we're here to kind of give you a summary of what they offer. But every platform is going to be different for different businesses. And so this is where you need to take the knowledge that you get from today and then go out and speak with them, look on their websites and do the research to choose the one that's going to be the best fit for your business as well.
Absolutely. And I've given you, we have later on in the slides, we've picked 5 or 6 providers and we've kind of put their offering together. Sorry. Anyway, okay. I thought I was missing.
No, it's fine. There you go.
Okay. Putting the offering together. And again, this is not to push them or say that they're best in the market. This is to kind of just look at what we looked at to bring these guys to put their offering together and how we put it together, what we looked at, so you can go out there and do it with whichever payment gateway or whoever it is as a provider that you want to look at. That brings us right to this slide. The leaders, right? We put together these 5 or 6 payment gateway providers because they are quite widely used, and we ourselves have used them for our clients. Does this mean that they're perfect and that they're best solutions that are out there? Absolutely not. Every single one of these providers that we're going to talk about has their set of issues. Our different merchants have faced issues. But what it is, like I said, just a little bit, it's not about telling you these guys are great. It's about seeing or thinking through the thought process of what are we looking at, what do they offer, and they are some of the leaders. We looked at what are the card platform CMS, what payment methods, and what integration options they offer. Now, before I go in here and talk to you about the leaders, let me talk to you a little bit about 2 types of payment gateways that are there, right? You have one that is the actual facilitator, who is in the first model that I talked about, right? He's standing in the middle of you and saying, let me fix this for you. And you have another model, which is an aggregator. So the facilitator has signed the agreement with the acquiring bank, which is the bank that's actually acquiring the funds. Because at the end of the day, funds have to go to a bank. They cannot go to a payment gateway. So he signed this agreement with this acquiring bank, and he kind of acts as the agent, or he acts as the front man for this bank. So whatever your approvals are, whatever your KYCs are, or whatever questions that are coming, your final approval lies with the acquiring bank. Like for checkout, for example, the acquiring bank is Mashreq. I think also for pay tabs, the acquiring bank is Mashreq. Now, Mashreq has a very complex, they're generally a much more traditional bank. They require a lot of details. They have a lot of KYC in process. So sometimes the onboarding process for these guys who are facilitators could be longer, with due to no fault of theirs. It's because the credit, and somebody who's worked in a bank, let me tell you, if credit asks a question, you jump and you answer that question. You cannot tell them, why do you want to know? So if they come back to you and say, I need to know this about them, you're like, okay, sure. If they say jump, you say how high, right? That kind of a situation. So sometimes the onboarding time with your facilitators is longer. However, they have these direct contracts with the acquirers themselves, and it is like signing up directly with that bank. It's very secure. You also have aggregators. Aggregators, basically what they do is they issue sub-merchant IDs under their one cloud merchant ID, right? So for an aggregator, it's a very quick decision to onboard a merchant or not. And usually aggregators will tend to onboard smaller merchants with smaller values and kind of manage their risk. When I say values, I mean transactional values. They'll manage their risk that way. They'll keep it to smaller and medium, not even medium, more smaller establishments. And then when their transaction volume go over a certain process, they go back to their acquiring bank and then create a KYC for the sub-merchant altogether. So that could be the huge discrepancy that you see in terms of onboarding times. Your onboarding time with a facilitator will always be a little bit longer than your onboarding time with an aggregator. But with the facilitator, once you're onboarded, it's a full-time, forever kind of a relationship. But sometimes with an aggregator, as your volumes grow to a certain point, you might have to go through another onboarding process with the acquiring bank, depending on what kind of arrangements they have with their acquirers. Yeah.
And there's a few people who are mentioning in the chat that it's taken them some time to get onboarded with different providers. Again, you know, as you said, it comes down to doing the KYC or know your customer, and that's the information forms. And sometimes, you know, it depends upon your trade license, what kind of business you have, how many business partners are in the business, and they're weighing up all of these different things. And sometimes that's why it can take them a bit longer to go and approve as well. So let's jump into explaining some of the areas of the different providers, Ash.
Yeah, all right. Let's go to Teller. I always smile when I come to Teller, and it's just because of the nostalgia behind it. I remember when I launched my first e-commerce platform, we had to go with this. To get an e-commerce platform in 2010, I had to incorporate a company in London, and then you had to get it via Skrill on PrestaShop. And the two founders of Teller found us at that time, and they said, we're going to do this, and we're going to be, you know, we're launching this market. And they pitched to us sitting at a coffee shop in Barjuman. And I remember thinking, these guys are going to go places, and I'm so happy that they have. Now, that said, Teller, like I said, has 3 pricing models. They are very transparent with their pricing. You can go onto their website and you can look at that. It's always updated. They're very good with updation, actually. That's one thing that they do well. They update it all the time. They support most major CMS platforms, content management systems. So Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, OpenCart, etc. This is something you look at. Secondly, what else do you look at? What are the payments that they support? I need Visa, Master, Amex, Apple Pay, right? Apple Pay is fantastic. They support PayPal. Now, if you have Saudi in the mix, it's important to check that Sadat is supported. And net banking in India. India is very comfortable with net banking. So if you have a lot of merchants buying from there, again, that's something that they need to do. What kind of integrations do they offer? They pretty much offer everything. They offer self-hosted as well as iframe. They offer on-page if you are PSIDDS, which is the Permanent Standard Industry. I have it written down somewhere. I'll tell you in a bit. The DSS I keep forgetting because for a long time it just used to be PSI. I'm very old. And the recurring, now these guys offer recurring payments. And I will say this now as a blanket statement to anybody thinking of setting a subscription-based website in the region. If you're looking at setting a subscription-based website where you have to get recurring payments, then for Shopify, perhaps, is not the right platform for you. There's only one provider, that is Checkout, and I will come to that a little bit later, with whom you can actually even manage a recurring payments integration with Shopify. Again, it's not a plug and play integration. You have to develop an API and they will develop an API and then you bring the recurring payments in. So pretty much with everybody else, most other payment gateways offer recurring payments. But if you have a Shopify as your payment Shopify, if you want to accept recurring payments, Shopify is probably not the right CMS platform for you. I know it's a little bit off topic, but I thought I would just mention that because the number of times we get inquiries of people who are stuck at that point and have to redo their process, I just thought this would be something to say here. Let's move on to Amazon Payment Services, which used to be called Payfort. Again, most of these guys support all of the major CMS platforms, right? If you are going with something different, which is not major or it's not huge in this region, or it's not huge globally, or it's a very niche thing, like I know, Jen, you mentioned Kajabi, which has only 2 integrations in place. It's then worth going back and checking what are the integrations in place there. But if you're looking at going with one of the fairly, highly used platforms, most of these guys, most likely you will be okay in terms of getting them integrated onto their site. It's no problem. They take all of the major guys. They have the API integrations. They also have plugins. Now, remember when I said, when you go onto Amazon, you have your credit card details saved on there, right? And remember when I said you can't do that unless you're PSI compliant. Credit card companies offer something called tokenization. Basically, what it does is it takes your credit card details and it creates a scrambled token. So as a merchant, you're not really seeing the credit card information, but this allows you to save that for all sorts of recurring payments and things like that. So if you have a need, like we use tokenization quite a lot in terms of edtech or medtech, right? If you have a need, Payfort is great in terms of tokenization. Also, Checkout is very good. They allow that as well. But most likely when you're using tokenization, I will tell you that getting it approved is not so easy. They may offer it, but approving it is a whole other ballgame. And they offer a collect option where you can create payment links. Again, this is not like Zabuni where you can create a catalog. You can just create a payment link, and they have an option of one-to-one. So Ash has created a payment link for Jen, or one-to-many. Ash has created a payment link and pretty much anybody on this chat can pay. Checkout, again, pretty much all. Now, if you see all of these guys, Teller and Amazon Payment Services, and their payments are quite transparent. You will go onto their website, you will say, this is my volume of transactions, and Checkout will, and they will spit out what they're going to charge in terms of their transactions, in terms of their pricing, etc. You'll be able to find it on the website as a starting point. Checkout says, we customize your pricing. So it's a whole conversation you need to have with them, right? A customizable pricing can go either in their favor or in your favor. All right, I'm going to rush through these. I know we're very close to time. They are the
only. While you're doing that, Ash, can you just clarify for everybody, because quite a few people aren't clear about what tokenization is? Just quick description.
How can I explain it better? Tokenization is when you accept a credit card, they add your credit card detail, but on the back end, it's scrambled. So it's still saved on the user side. They know what their card details are, etc., but the merchant can't see it. So the user can reuse it, or when you go to Amazon, you have your payment saved, right? So that's because it's been tokenized and it's saved. So you can see what credit card details you have saved there, but on Amazon's end, they can't see it because it's been scrambled and created into this number that they call a token.
Perfect description, thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Again, Shopify, we've managed to get recurring payments via checkout. You have to do an API integration. So you need a Shopify expert a true Shopify expert, not the guys who are coming and building your Shopify store for 3,000 dirhams via themes. You need a Shopify expert if you want to take this, who are able to build out your API from Shopify, connect it to checkout Shopify, and then checkouts API, and then accept recurring payments from there. As of now, this is the only way to get recurring payments on Shopify in the region. However, there's a big rumor coming that Shopify payments is coming to the region together with Stripe. Checkout, as well as Teller earlier, I don't know who Teller's partner is offering buy now, pay later. Checkout are also offering buy now, pay later, and this is via Tamara. I have a slide on buy now, pay later, so I'll just kind of explain that when we go closer to that, if that's okay. Paytabs. Paytabs is a homegrown company, always close to my heart when they're homegrown. They also were the guys who saved me when I told you when a big provider dumped me and I needed a payment gateway ASAP. They were the guys who came in and they had me up and ready in 24 hours back in the day. However, Paytabs has different integration modules, right? They have the iframe, they have the API integration, but they also have an express checkout, which means that there's a pop-up that comes in the same page that you have, and you can add in the credit card details and you check out. Well, as a user experience, it's fantastic because you're removing all the distractions. Any UX designer will hate distractions. You know, very often small business merchants think, let me upsell, we at Check, and I'll come to that when we talk later, we remove everything, even the logo, we just keep the logo, we remove the headers, we remove the menus, we remove everything. All you want is that person to add and check out. This pop-up, sometimes if it doesn't load, you have a lot of abandonments. So I would say that's something to keep in mind. They've just said on their website that they're not holding any reserves for SMEs. They've also said that they have a 24-hour, you can be up and running in 24 hours. I will be very transparent and I will tell you that not one of my merchants has been onboarded on Paytabs within 24 hours so far. It has always taken longer. They are acquiring bankers Mashreq. Mashreq is quite conservative. They have a lot of questions. The KYC process is quite intensive. It might be something new that they've launched. Like I said, the SME space is always evolving. The fintech space is always evolving. And perhaps there's a new relationship or there's a certain thing that's launched in place that's allowing this, but it's not an experience we've had. Stripe. Sorry about these logo resolutions. I don't know what went wrong there. Anyway, Stripe. Stripe is the new kid on the UAE block. They came in quite late to the game. They ran their beta for a while. Stripe is one of those platforms where you go globally and you tell anyone, say, what should I use? And they most likely the answer will come back and they'll say Stripe. Stripe is a very advanced, evolved solution, right? It pretty much think about anything that you want and they will offer it. So they offer integrations with most CMS platforms. They also have an API integration. APIs usually we use when we're custom building something, in which case we have to still integrate with them and you need the open APIs for that. They have the self-hosted checkout, which is their checkout, but as well as they give you the ability to create your own checkout, but with their UI elements. It's called Stripe elements. So they have certain codes with their UI elements. You can use UI as user interface. So a user experience is the entire flow together with how your website, the look and feel of your website is UI. So they have their UI and the elements that you can customize to some extent and create your checkout experience. They have pricing available on the website, but I can tell you for a fact that I have merchants who are paying less than the pricing available on the website. So again, have that conversation. It supports recurring payment. And globally, Stripe is the Shopify payment partner, right? Shopify Payments is a partnership between Shopify and Stripe. It's still not been launched into this market. Hopefully, very, very soon. Sorry, I think, let me move on to the next. Others. These are a few that I wanted to tell you guys about. PayLink is one that a few of our merchants have used and they've been happy with. And I've had a chat with the founder. Usually I'm very conservative when it comes to payment gateways or when it comes to anything fintech. I like to use people who have been in the market for a very long time, who have a reputation. I tend to be conservative with using the new kid on the block generally. PayLink, however, is point checkout. Point checkout is an old company, and this is an innovation of their solution. They are an aggregator, which I explained a little bit before. So they're able to onboard you really quickly. They have integrations with WooCommerce and Magento. I think they didn't at Shopify when I spoke with Tarek last, but it's something worth checking. Mcnatty is one of the most expensive out there. Mcnatty will charge you 4,000 dirhams a year. And they have two solutions, which is a payment gateway solution and a payment links solution. However, they're one of the few whose percentages is in the ones, right? So their transaction percentage is lower. One of our clients who is a furniture merchant, his average order or transaction volume is 15,000 dirhams. So when we look at the grand scheme of things, this is a great example of percentage via that outlay. When we did the math, actually Mcnatty worked out favorable for that business. To checkout is another one. To checkout, checkout as well as to checkout, I would say, are slightly better or better for medium plus businesses. They're a little bit more built for enterprise kind of businesses, and their terms and conditions and policies pretty much work for the slightly bigger businesses. And you can always go back to your own banks. Rack Bank has become very aggressive in the payments space. It's quite especially if you're a Rack Bank account holder, one of our merchants uses a Rack Bank payment gateway. It works absolutely fine, and they do offer support. And it's they're great. So I'll just do the PayPal slide, and I know I will stop. The pros of PayPal: it's trusted globally, it's user-centric, which is great for a user, and you always have your username and password at the top of your mind, right? So when you want to check out and you don't have your credit card details, you always know what's your email and what's your password. So conversion-wise, that sometimes helps. The cons of it, however, is it's a clunky UX. I don't like anybody leaving my site during the time that that leads to a lot of attrition. You have currency conversion issues because the base currency is always US dollars. And, I've heard from a few people that the transfers and payouts, you could expect to get paid it might take as long as 30 days is some of the feedback that I've got. Does a business need more than one payment gateway? The pros are that it offers choice. You can use buy now, pay later, or ability to use an existing account. But I would say my personal opinion is that you shouldn't do it, especially regionally where these things are not common. It causes confusion. It needs the user to make a decision at checkout, which I don't want them making. At checkout, I want them the only decision is to check out. So if you can avoid it, I would say definitely avoid it. Before onboarding, negotiate, do the due diligence in the terms and conditions, ask about things like, all the stuff that we talked about, ask for a point of contact post-contract, and confirm in writing what your preferred payment cycles or what you've agreed on. Make sure that that's in your contract. Buy now, pay later is one of those things. Jen, do you want to wrap up, or can I?
We need to wrap up in a second, but do talk about it really quickly because this is important as well.
Buy now, pay later is basically allowing the user to buy from you but pay in installments, right? So this is available. There's lots of providers. You have Spotty, Tabby, Tamara, lots of BNPL players in the market. What happens is usually at that point in time when they select an installment plan, the merchant gets paid immediately minus whatever fees, and the fees usually sitting at 6%. 5 to 6%, but this is not including, you don't have to pay payment gateway charges as well. You just pay these transaction fees. So they get paid upfront, and then they take the payments from the user. And this really increases conversions and average order value. Like Zip says that it increases their conversions, that their analytics show that conversions increased by 20% and average order value increased by 60%, which actually I can believe. Right, done.
Okay, I'm gonna get these polls in really quickly, and then we can answer a couple more questions. I think we have answered quite a few, but I just have the poll questions for everybody to answer. please help us out. Let us know how much more you understand payment gateways and getting them set up for your business. That would be really helpful. A couple of questions. People are asking for the recording. Yes, you will be set in link to the recording because this is being recorded, so you can watch it again afterwards. Now, there's a few questions I want to come back to just before. I know we have to wrap up in a second, but one person asked, can we use payment gateway if we have a services business? Do you want to give your view on that? I have my view as well.
I think so. I absolutely see why not. I don't see why not. Again, it comes down to what kind of services. It comes down to how often is this payment happening. It comes down to how standardized is it, right? If you have a website and your services are something like you are a chiropractor, absolutely. As a consultant, it's a little harder for me to charge via payment gateway. So it all actually comes down to the business model.
Yeah, and if I can just add as well, so I think if you give your customers or your clients different channels and how they can pay you, then absolutely you should do it. And there's some payment gateways as well, for example, that don't charge you very much, that if you have that option, if it's a difference between you having the sale or not, because sometimes I know that I've had customers ask me or clients ask me that they want to pay by credit card, even though you would prefer bank transfer, maybe for whatever reason they're having cash flow issues and where they want to make payments on their credit cards. If you can give them that option, it ensures that you have that sale and that you know, and when you have credit card payment, you get access to those funds relatively quickly as well. I'm just looking to see if a lot of people are happy about the Shopify Stripe integration. I think we've covered PayPal. Now, the one thing as well about PayPal, I know a lot of people use PayPal in the very beginning because it's relatively easy for them to get. The market has really evolved in the UAE over the past couple of years, and there are a number of options that have much lower rates than PayPal does, and you can integrate them into your platform as well. So that's where you can go and do your research and identify the one that will work for you as well. Okay, we have lots of people saying amazing session, lots of unpacking to do. I need to relook at this at my business model. Thanks for informative session. So I think thank you very much to everybody. We really appreciate your time and you joining us today. And as always, thank you to UN Women and NAMA Women Advancement, and to Ash and Shraddha as well for giving us your time and your insight and your knowledge today. And to all of you for taking part, thank you so much for your support and being part of this program. And we wish you a beautiful day and a wonderful week ahead. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you, everyone.
It's such a pleasure.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
So much.
Have you